Hey, beautiful friend, it's Marnie. Have you ever felt stuck, unfulfilled, overwhelmed, or trapped by the same old, same old? Well, I know I have. And I know there's definitely been times in my life where I haven't felt like the author of my own story. So if you've ever felt like you need a rewrite on the life that you're living, and to maybe get back in the driver's seat to write your own story for this next chapter of your beautiful life, then you are in the right place. So stick around because you're not going to want to miss this. As we all know, life isn't always delicious. And one of the only constants we have in life is that things are always changing. Life can be a beautiful mess of twists and turns. And as we grow through each unique season of life, our needs change, our goals change, our priorities change, and our responsibilities change. And sometimes when the really hard stuff shows up, as it inevitably will, we can find ourselves lost and without a clear direction. Sometimes that can happen when we've had a huge life transition, like a divorce or a diagnosis, or we realize that our babies are all grown up and ready to be out on their own. And sometimes it can be a subtle or not so subtle restlessness that tells us we're ready to step into a bigger, bolder, more authentic version of ourselves. But one thing is for sure, we can't transition into what's next happily until we get really clear about what's weighing us down, what lights us up, and what we truly want when our soul whispers its truth. Happy is Not an Accident is a guided journal created to bring you back home to your truest self, to remember who you are, and to give you a safe place to explore and reflect on where you've been, where you really want to go, and who you want to become now. With deep, inspiring prompts, thought-provoking questions, and powerful exercises to help you excavate your most authentic self, Happy is Not an Accident will be the daily ritual that you look forward to as you step into this next awesome chapter of life. Give yourself the gift of self-reflection and create this beautiful life of yours on purpose and with intention. Get your copy or one for somebody that you love at lifeisdelicious.ca/happy. At the heart of every single person's journey, whether it's personal or professional, is a story that defines where you've been and where you're headed, and what you believe to be true for the possibilities of your life. Today, I have a beautiful guest. Her name is Carrie K.C. West. She is an author, a speaker, and a narrative coach. And she was a storyteller who worked behind the scenes in Hollywood for many years. And now she helps people write their own breakthrough stories, whether it's overcoming personal challenges or elevating a brand. So whether you're looking to rewrite the narrative of your own life, or tap into a new business strategy, or simply find a new perspective for your life, Carrie K.C. West is going to give us some beautiful wisdom on how to shape our own story. Welcome, Carrie. I'm so grateful to have you with us today. I'm thinking that we are going to have a very illuminating conversation.
They usually are.
It sounds like you have a fascinating story, and I'm super curious as to how you got started with this work. And I think a lot of it comes from some of your personal growing up experience. So maybe start us back there. Give us a little bit of your background and how it led you to this place.
Wonderful. Happy to. I didn't have a very good beginning. You've heard the term dysfunctional, and I think that is so overused. There's a theory that none of us get out of it unscathed. You know, we all have something that lingers with us or came through from childhood. So in my particular instance, I was neglected. My parents decided that, oops, we shouldn't have had a kid, and so what are we going to do with her? Well, let's leave her alone. She'll figure it out. And I'm not even exaggerating when I say that. I had to grow up very quickly, but it was a tough existence.
Did you have any siblings to go on that journey with you, or were you an only child?
Oh, I had siblings, and they became a part of my torture chamber. So my two older siblings were a part of the problem. My younger sister and I became very close, but I did everything I could to protect her from the damage that was done to me. So I became her protector. And so when my father died, it was very traumatic for me. And not the least because the day he died, he said to me 3 words I'd always wanted to hear from him. And he said to me that he loved me. And that just blew my mind because he was not a present person anyway. But then to say that made it even more difficult because he ended up dying about a half hour later. He fell over from a massive heart attack and died. So I was left with this very odd comment, and then he leaves. And I had no way to process that. So I really hit rock bottom after that.
How old would you have been at this point?
I was 24 when Dad died. And so it was really traumatizing on top of an already traumatic life. So I went to work. I started going to therapy. I talked to anybody. I went to personal development. I studied metaphysics, studied my spiritual growth, my personal growth. And when I went to film school about 10 years later, 10 years after he died, I went to film school. And I should back up and say one of the ways I got through this beginning was I would tell myself stories about my real family looking for me. And so, it's amazing to me how kids have a way of taking care of themselves, things they do for self-care. They suck thumbs, they have their teddies, they have a blankie. I told myself stories. So I always loved stories. And as I studied it more in the work that I do, I understand the value of stories in personal narratives in person psychology. So when I went to film school, we were sitting there doing a film project, and we're looking at the characters and the themes and the motivations and the journey that the hero goes on and how it's resolved in the end. And as we're doing this, I had this huge epiphany. And my epiphany was, my life is a story. It's a shitty one, but it's a story.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, maybe if I could change the characters or change some of these things like we do in a movie project, maybe I could rewrite my story. Because it's always interesting when you, even on the day you're filming, they talk about rewrites. Where are today's rewrites? Where are today's rewrites? Because you're constantly finagling and fine-tuning and updating different things on the script once you get into the actual process of the story. If you ever get a chance to watch a movie being made, it's really quite fascinating. So, and it really applies to what we do as storytellers of our own personal narratives. So that just, for some reason, that landed so firmly with me. And I started investigating and putting my life into the context of it being a story. And when I did that, I could understand it and made sense to me. So it started with the origin story. And that's a direct correlation to a backstory. When you're watching a TV pilot or a movie, the first 15 minutes of the movie, the first pilot, is where you learn about your characters, right? They find these ways to tell you about this character. It could be the costumes, it could be the language, it could be the people they interact with. They make one comment to a person and you know that they're married and have 6 kids. It's amazing to me how elegant writers are when they're trying to get across this person we want to follow in on this story that when you're in a movie or a TV show.
That's fascinating.
Isn't it though?
Yeah.
But that you have to get that connection. You have to understand why we are interested in this character. And that to me directly correlates to our personal origin stories. And what I mean by that is when we're born, we're little babies, we leave the womb, and we land on a stage in a play, in a story that's been going on for several years. We don't know where our parents are in life when we're born. We don't know if we're the only child or if we have siblings. We don't know if we're being put up for adoption. We have none of this information. All we know is that we're in this bright, shiny space with all this noise, and we're like, where the heck are we? So
you become part of the story.
Yes. As in order for us to kick in this sense of belonging that we all have, because belonging is survival for us. We, in our lizard brains, We need to be a part of this group. We need to feel the safety and security of being a part of this village or this tribe or this group that we find ourselves in. So we started adopting and absorbing all the messages, all the stories, all the information we're given from this core group of people. So when you look at your origin story, it's amazing to me how your origin story is so present in who you are today. I don't care if you're 10, 20, or 200. Your origin story, you can see it very well delineated in the person you are at this very moment.
Do you think you would use the analogy of, say, a foundation for a house would be like your origin story would be the foundation of which how you build your life?
Absolutely. That's brilliant. May I use that?
Yes, you can.
No, you're absolutely right. Again, you come in completely blank slate. So you need something to build from, right?
Absolutely.
This origin story does become your foundational story. When you start looking at that and you understand who your parents were, first of all, I think we as kids put our parents up on pedestals. And we have to remember that before they became mom and dad, they had their own stories.
Right.
And we all have multiple stories anyway. You know, you have Marnie the podcast story, Marnie the partner, Marnie the friend, Marnie, I don't know if you have kids, but if you do, you have
mom, daughter, all the things,
daughter,
cousins.
So you are all those stories. They become a part of your identity. It's such a complex person that we are. We are so complex that this is why I like the story analogy the best. I talk to so many different people about how do I really make true life transformation? And I just don't believe there is a one-size-fits-all package for anybody because we're so complex. We have so many pieces to our puzzle. And that's what makes us beautiful as human beings, and that also what makes us challenging as human beings.
Absolutely.
But, so the story analogy gave me a way to understand that. And when I share that with people, you wouldn't believe how many times I can almost see them physically relax because it's this awareness and an understanding of who we are as a whole person.
So how did you reconcile some of that, real hardship growing up, and how did you find your way into healing yourself and moving into the film industry? How did that come about?
Well, first of all, I had to understand that there's a lot of broken people in any industry. And because of my pain and shame, I thought I was a terribly flawed person, which meant I didn't deserve to have a career I wanted or the work I wanted. So when I started doing this work, I was driven because I really wanted to be in the film industry. I like storytelling.
Yeah.
And what's the better place to go to be a storyteller than the film industry? And so just being in that energy, just being on a studio lot, it's really a whole different space. So I thought, if I'm going to do this, I need to take a look at why don't I feel deserving. And again, that brought me back to my origin story. Because I was rejected on the day I was born, I had to deal with this fear of rejection and a fear of abandonment. And that all contributed to me having walls, space around me to protect myself. I needed protections because I was terrified of getting rejected. So I had to understand the root of that. I had to understand the origin of it. And it took me right to that very first day when Mom rejected me. She didn't want to hold me in the hospital, didn't want to feed me. But then I had to realize I had a lot of anger and pain and a lot of trauma because I never knew if I was going to be fed. I never knew if I was going to have diapers changed. As an infant, that's traumatic. So I had to,
for sure.
I had to look at my trauma and then took that apart and saw the rage and how angry I was for my situation. I was angry at Mom, Dad, God, the spirits. I was angry at everybody. Why did you do this to me? When I got over my rage and my anger, I looked for understanding, and that's where the origin story came in. It wasn't that my mom hated me. And I think, she died shortly after my dad, so we never had the chance to have this conversation. But I think on some level my mom did love me. But I came to realize that my mom was a broken woman. She had probably a worse background than I did. She was one of 13 people from an immigrant family, and they didn't have they had kids to work in the fields and the farm. They were farmers. They didn't have kids because they wanted to love and nurture them and give them a good life. So she had her own traumas. She had mental health issues that came out when I was around 10 years old. Not that it wasn't to do with her. There was a part of me that thought, why didn't she take steps to change? Here I am working hard to change. Why didn't she do it? When I realized that, I reached a point where I said, Mom's gone. So what's going to be the best route for me? And that's when I discovered the power of forgiveness. Mom was gone. I needed to forgive her to set myself free.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
That's
not always easy, but it's definitely a huge piece of the puzzle.
No, it wasn't easy, but I did it. I did it a few times. And there's layers to forgiveness. You peel off one layer of it and you're good, but then there's another layer that comes up. So it's something that I was committed to. And every time another layer came up, I just looked at it, felt my feelings around it. And there's also an easier piece of it. When I realized I didn't have to forgive what she did, I could forgive the why she did it.
Right.
I started to feel a great deal of compassion for her. She didn't give herself the opportunity of a great life, whereas I have a great life. But I understand her as a woman in the time period she was in and what she had on her. That was a challenge for her. That had nothing to do with me, Marnie. Nothing
absolutely.
At all. Nothing
I
at
know,
all.
and that's the most interesting part because we can't change our past, but we can change what the past means to us.
Yes.
And then we have the opportunity for forgiveness and even the compassion, you're talking about how you have a great life, but you have a great life because you chose to have a great life.
Correct.
And that's not something everybody chooses to do.
That's right. I often say to people, and my clients especially, change doesn't necessarily come in big sweeping movements, but real transformation in life comes from micro moments of change. And what I mean by that is you are standing at a crossroads and you are triggered or you have a decision point to make. I realized I could stay mad at my parents forever and blame them for the rest of my life. But did I want to do that, or did I want to forgive them and take the other road? That to me is a micro moment of change.
Yeah, one of the things I always find fascinating is that oftentimes when people grow up in a really challenging early life, quite often, especially if you can get to where you are and you find that compassion or to be able to look at their life with a different lens, quite often it also becomes fuel to make sure you don't repeat some of those same patterns.
Exactly.
Which is amazing.
You really can. When you start seeing your life as a story, you can start saying, wow, I'm more determined than I thought I was. Wow, I see what they did there. What if I went down another road? Really can give you a map for how to maneuver through this complex thing we call life.
Absolutely. I love that because we talk quite a bit on the podcast about being in the driver's seat of our life and how to do that. And I think it's really important, like when you speak about a story, that even oftentimes when we're in our own story, maybe we're not happy, maybe we're lonely, maybe there's something that's missing. And so we go find another character to add what we are missing into our story.
Yes. Boy, you really get this. This is exciting.
Well, I've never really thought of it from this perspective, but I think it's really fascinating because it's, I haven't used this particular language with it before, but it's a lot of what I teach. And I work with a group called Mindset Mastery for Midlife Women, and we talk similar topics, but I love the story component because it really does make sense.
It fits. Can I share why? There's a reason why it fits.
100%. I love that.
Our brains want coherence. They want organization. They are dealing with much more than what we see, feel, hear, taste, listen to, whatever. They are in the brain is constant motion. It is collecting every bit of information that's occurring around you 24/7. Even when you're sleeping, your brains are functioning. Stories are a natural way to organize information. Stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You have characters. So when you're in your brain is thinking, okay, that's a character in this story. This is where I'm going to put it in that story. And by the way, a character doesn't necessarily have to be a person. A character can be the doubtful thoughts in your mind. Characters are really the key element of your story. So your brain works very well understanding characters or characterizations of what we would call an inanimate object.
Or like your alter ego or your negative self-talk version of yourself.
Exactly. So all these things make it easy for the brain to make sense of it. Then you have themes. In a movie, your standard themes of love beats evil, love always wins, good beats evil, power corrupt. So the theme is also the message you want to give. It's what you want to show. It's the moral to the story. Then you have motivations. Go to a casting call or go to a filming, and you'll often hear the actor say, "What's my motivation? Why am I saying this line? It doesn't roll off the tongue for me." And for an actor, the line should roll off the tongue. It should be able to embed itself into their being and into this character that they're portraying. So your motivations are another way. And again, your brains will help you understand motivations. Now, if it's filtered through some of your bad themes, you won't get the right motivation. People will speak to you and they have their motivations for why they're doing something, but your filters misinterpret it because your brain is taking the information through the filters, through the themes.
And that's where we can get tripped up because we have assumptions about what we think it means when it actually doesn't mean that at all.
Exactly. But your brain organizing information has categorized this as, trouble. And the good news is when you start taking this apart, when you start rewriting your stories, your brain will comply. Your brain is a great script doctor. It'll help you. It's like, all right, we'll put that scene over here then.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating even from the perspective of not only story creation, but from a place of manifesting. The stories that we make up or the visualizations that we make up quite often help us to bring into our life the things that we're missing or the things that we're looking to attract.
Exactly.
So storytelling is a massive, big part of all of that as well.
Exactly. When you're manifesting and visualizing, aren't we just creating a story?
Absolutely. And it goes to show the power of your mind and how you can transform your life and your story by giving your mind something positive to focus on and something to work towards rather than focusing on what's been wrong or what we can't change.
Correct.
So I was reading one of your reviews and I saw that somebody said your book called Life Rewritten, which is it just a brand new release?
March. Came out the middle of March.
Awesome. Okay. So one of the reviews I read said that it's the Swiss Army knife of a book, part memoir, part toolkit, and part instructional guide. So can you give some of the listeners just a few tips on how they can transform their narrative, maybe just on a day-to-day basis with some small things that they could do?
Well, the first thing that I tell everybody is build awareness of where you get stuck and you repeat patterns. Repeated patterns are repeated plot points. It's the hero who keeps walking into the wall. Did you ever watch a movie and it's like, come on, don't do that. You did that before. Stop walking into that darn wall.
Yeah, the babysitter in the basement with the serial killer upstairs.
And why are they always at night? Why? Can't you think about leaving the house in the daytime? Why do you keep doing that?
I totally agree.
So the first thing is the awareness. What's the repeats? Are you somebody who always dates the wrong people, always works for bosses who are always the bad guy? The other clue I have with people to really know you're in a story. The minute somebody says, well, I should do that. Red flag. Should is a story you're about to repeat. And it's usually a story that was given to you. And should is also a great time you can do a micro moment of change, which is again, I think one of the most powerful things we can do. When you are in that moment of awareness of a story, question what you can do to change that story. What is the different decision you can do to have a different outcome? But if you understand that you are doing something because you were trained to or you were made to believe that was the right way to go, that's when you need to step back, take a deep breath, and say, what can I do differently right at this very moment? And
often when you hear the word should, it's usually somebody else's voice in your head, right?
Exactly. It's another it's another storyteller in your head. It's in that moment of change when you can take that moment and stop what you're about to do, stop the reaction that you're about to have. And I know, believe me, I've been there a billion times, and it's hard sometimes where, especially because I was so traumatized, triggers and PTSD was huge for me. And I would sometimes get triggered and be down for hours in the darkness because I just did not know how to respond. But way I got out of it was I just started training myself to remember that this is not anything more than a story, an old story, a bad story. So once you can calm down your autonomic nervous system, because that's what gets triggered, you can start thinking of ways through. In my book, I actually offer several techniques to deal with themes and motivations and characters, and how you can just stop, take a moment, and think about a new way to step forward.
Yeah, and I think our words are so powerful, and we forget that when we say things over and over again, it's like cementing the behavior rather than saying, instead of always saying, like, I'm always late. No, I'm trying to be early, and just finding a new way to reframe that dialogue that can actually help to rewire your brain for success.
Yes. And it takes focus and practice, but I promise you, your brains want to comply, and your brain does.
It's interesting looking at this from the place of a story and how we can rewrite our story, because I think especially when we're in this sort of mid-section of life, we've done all the things we're supposed to do. We've been a mom, possibly, not everybody, but usually we've built a career. We've looked after our parents and our relatives. And then we come to this crossroads where it's like we want to reinvent a little bit, and we need to maybe we've outgrown that story, and maybe it's time to add some new elements to the story so that we can live a different chapter of the story.
Absolutely. There's always another chapter to be written. And I will say, for people listening, I had so much trouble dating. Dating to me was the worst job interview in the world. And so I rarely had a boyfriend. I rarely had that connection. It wasn't until I was 55 years old that a gentleman I'd been friends with for a couple years, we were having dinner, and all of a sudden we looked at each other and said, hold on, there's something more here. And I said to him, there can't be. We haven't even gone on a date. And he said, and he's British, and we were in England at the time. I had moved to England for a summer. And he said, well, what are you doing tomorrow night? I have a great pub in Leslie that I'll take you to. We've been together ever since.
So just
We've been together
reframing the story.
Yes, because I had decided that I wasn't going to listen to what people. I mean, at 55, I was kind of like, well, I'm not going to have kids at this point. I'm not going to do the usual thing that women do in a relationship. So I'm just gonna say I'm open to a relationship. What do you got? And it was just so weird how it turned out. It was very funny.
Well, also because you were open to maybe looking at a different plot line. How's that?
Exactly. I was finally able to say, I'm going to have my own story around a relationship. I don't have to have what's expected of me.
No, I love that so much. And I think that's a really powerful way of looking at our life and seeing a different perspective. I think that's amazing. So tell us a little bit about your book and tell us what readers can expect and give us just a little synopsis as to what they can expect to get from that.
Well, my book is unusual. Again, my expectations for the book. It's 3 parts. Each chapter is a segment from how do you look at your life as a story. So I start off each chapter with a story from my life that applies to the element. And then I talk about the element of the story, and then I give you a how to work it through in your life. I did that because I did not want to have to ask people to buy a workbook on top of everything else. This, to me, was a pretty straightforward way to present the information and then encourage people to follow through. The one thing I didn't do, and I wish I would have, is I encouraged people to get a journal. But I heard from one reader who said she's an artist, so instead of journaling, she would paint or draw what she was feeling and expressing. And I thought, how clever. There's somebody writing her story. She's doing it her way, on her term.
Absolutely.
And so I would like to encourage you to say what works for you in how you want to document what you're doing. Do you do better with recording? Record your story. Write it down. Paint a picture. Dance it. Do it with movement. Whatever it is to understand what your story is. And once you understand the story, I actually give you techniques for how to change it. But my biggest technique is awareness and making a new decision at that moment in time. That's the most powerful thing.
I love that. And it's really in line. I have a book that's called Happy is Not an Accident, and it's actually a journal. It's a guided journal, and it really is kind of exactly along that same line, because I feel like people can't move into a new way of being until they understand why they're being where they are. And to get that awareness is huge, and to be able to put it in words, or like you say, in a painting, or whatever way helps you to find that awareness, is the first step to being able to say, I want something else.
Yes. And also when you write it down or paint it or dance or talk about it, it takes it out of the body. It takes that energy out of your body so you can see it.
Yeah, and recognize it. And
exactly. And not be afraid of it.
Exactly, because it is just a piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole piece.
Exactly.
That's really cool. Well, tell everybody, I'm going to put all of the information on how to reach you into the show notes and how to get your book. But maybe just give the listeners, before we wrap up, a little bit more about how else they could work with you, if there's some other courses. And I know you do some speaking events and you've got all kinds of things. So maybe give us a little highlight of that, and then we'll make sure to include that in the show notes as well.
Perfect. Thank you. My website, carriekcwest.com, CarrieKCWEST.com, has a list of events. And I have 2 books coming out. Business Rewritten for the business people in the audience, and my favorite is Money Rewritten.
Amazing.
I have a course starting next week on rewriting your relationship with money, which I think is really powerful. And it's one of those aspects of life that just fascinates me, how we've taken this concept that is really an imaginary construct, and it has so much control and power on our lives. I take apart our relationship with money and help people rewrite that. And that course, again, starts next week, and I'm going to be offering that a few times. And that's all on the website, carriekcwest.com. I also do individual sessions. They're all listed on the website as well. The stories I'm hearing from people are so inspiring to me. So anytime you can share your story, I encourage you to do that.
Oh, that's really powerful. Well, I look forward to seeing the other 2 books come out, and I'm certain that it will be of immense value to our listeners. And I'm so grateful that you could put a little time aside for us to have a conversation today. I think this was really valuable, and I hope we can do it again.
I'd love that. It's a pleasure, Marnie. Really, truly a pleasure. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I hope it inspired you or motivated you in some way to keep going and to create your very best life. Want to know what to do next? Share this episode with someone that you love who maybe just needs a little more delicious in their life. Join my free Facebook community over at Mindset Mastery for Midlife Women, where like-minded women come together to support and inspire each other, and where we get to hang out together. And I offer cool bonuses, videos, and some extra content. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe so that when new episodes drop, they'll be queued up and ready for you. In case no one has told you today, there's not one person on this planet that is exactly like you. And the world is a better place because you're here. So thank you for being here. I'll be back next week, and I hope you'll join me right here on Life is Delicious.